Okay. All right, we'll call to order at 6:03.
All right, let me start the
Recording
webinar.
in progress.
Okay, cool.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And we'll open up for public comment. Again, raise your hand, and Andrew or Chris or Frank, well, Frank won't right now. We'll watch out for you.
I'm not seeing anybody.
Nobody. Okay.
And no, by the way, no updates on the website other than there was just a brief update to let people know we had narrowed it down to the 3 that we're talking about tonight, and that we would be trying to narrow down our preferred option tonight. The meeting on WinCam from last week has already been uploaded to the website, so it's mostly been just about putting stuff where it needs to be so people can kind of stay current.
Okay. And we got a review of meeting minutes for January 24th and January 31st. Has everyone had a chance to review those and get back to Don?
Yeah, my only comment on that, Jay and Don, is at the footer, we should just reference the TAP-A presentations, as a virtual document.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
I'll do that. Yeah.
That's easy to do. We just need to add that as a document that was reviewed.
Yep. That's fine. You got it.
Can we get a motion to accept those two?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Mark
did.
Okay, Mark's got it. All right, so we'll take a roll call. Chris?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Todd?
Aye.
Keitha?
Aye.
Miss Colleen?
Aye.
Awesome. And Frank second. Okay, so moved. Moving on. Add footer for TAP-A, right? Okay.
We have Winchester High School, and I can can I elevate? I'll elevate Chris Conway.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to do. I see Pete's there too. Let me see if I can do both. Yep, I think that worked. I see Chris has his hand up, Jay.
Yeah. I was here.
All right, Chris, you want to start?
So last week we received the SG&H final report on all the work that was done on the roof. And Meg, John, and I met virtually last Friday, I think it was, and kind of discussed the direction to go in and what our thoughts were on the report and where we wanted to take it from there. We have, I believe, decided that we would draft a letter based on that report for our project council to transmit to Consigli. I took a rough shot at that letter last week, and Meg sent it off to Wade today, and I think that's really where it's at now. We'll get Wade to kind of put his spin on it, and then it will go off to Consigli hopefully shortly. The distilled version of it, I think, is that we no longer are experiencing any more significant water intrusion into the building. We do have one small nuisance that may or may not be tied to a unit. The distilled version of the report is that where appears to be that we've been successful in stopping the leaks. The main concerns now last with the survivability and durability of the repairs, and that they'll stay in the game for as long as the units should. And that seems to be really the only real sticking point is, the quality, durability, survivability of the repairs. SG&H had some, had recommendations on that. The Consigli and all of their subs sort of took the easier road in making the repairs and not again, one of the bigger issues is not doing the same thing for everything on the roof. Only units that we identified as problematic. And throughout this whole back and forth with them, we've been pretty adamant about applying the resolution to all of the units on the roof, and they have been resistant to that. So what we have communicated is that is our wishes, and that we would like. They have offered a 5-year extended warranty on water intrusion into the buildings, but it is a very short, very generic 5-year extended warranty. So we are asking for some specificity in that warranty, both in what they'll do, what is some definitions, like what would constitute significant water intrusion, and then also looking for a ongoing maintenance type plan that would provide for a annual, at their cost, inspection by an Annexair rep. As of now, an inspection by an Annexair rep to come in and look at the units once a year during the summer and ensure that the seals, the construction is not failing, and certainly any of the repairs are not failing. 5 years only gets us so far, but it gets us further than, we're out of warranty now. I think that's sort of the highlights of everything that we left off with. John and Meg, anything you want to add? But I think that's sort of the bulk of it.
No, I agree. Yeah, you've covered everything. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. We're going to try to push, based on this, and we'll see what the next step is if we don't get cooperation and sort of where all that we want from Consigli at this point and their subs.
Right. So in the letter that Chris drafted, we are asking for them to come out one more time, do another round, look at some of the other units that don't have active leaks, just to make sure same condition doesn't exist. The idea is that if they agree to do that, we would probably get them out, if we were lucky, by April, if not most likely over the summer when the building wasn't occupied. So this is a very slow process, but, our hope is that by, with this next letter that we send to them, we can hopefully get them to agree at least, to most of the items that we're asking for one more time and come to some final, resolution.
Will the
It's
warranty?
not perfect. But the other end is, going down a major litigation avenue, which I'm not sure, we would even resolve in 5 years. So,
Meg, will the warranty be just on the units they've pointed out, or all the units that could possibly have a problem?
I believe all of the units.
Yeah.
I believe it is all of the, again, that's one of the reasons that we're asking for an expanded specificity in that warranty, is because it is very generic right now. It's maybe a 2 or 3 sentence blurb in an email. So from SG&H's recommendations, as well as everybody else on the team, the decision was that we really needed to put some teeth into it, so that there was something to reference to. We also did discuss that, the possibility of total unit replacement was not really a feasible approach at this time, given the fact that it's now an active building, and it would take, to do them during the summers, it would take several years to accomplish that, just restrict. So it didn't seem to make sense to pursue that as an avenue, but to really focus on trying to ensure the survivability of the repairs in the units that are up there now.
Right.
Okay. Chris, I know you buried any update on the paneling?
No, I apologize. It's just, since I've taken on a lot of these other things, it really had to go in the elective bucket for right now.
Right.
Jay, I had one for Chris and Pete on the high school, if I can.
Okay.
So, and I didn't have the opportunity to email either of you in advance for this, so this is sort of it's a surprise I'm throwing out here. The front of the building, the hardscape, is it probably 4 years old now. I think that was part of phase 2. Karen and I actually had a meeting at the high school this afternoon, and I was just struck at how Chris and Pete, we're losing a lot of the mortar joints in the granite treads that lead up to the school, and that where that top tread meets basically concrete, that actually looks like a rod and sealant joint, and that is also failing in multiple places. And of course, my concern is freeze thaw action. That's going to really deteriorate.
Yeah.
Is that,
So,
it's a wear surface. It's not really, I don't think of this so much as a warranty issue, but I want to be sure you guys are aware of it. Do we have a plan in place to sort of go after that? And is it possible that SMMA had, tint in the grout and so forth, and we have some aesthetic things we have to match and all that stuff?
so can I jump in on this? That
Please.
was a problem from early on, and there should be a lot of documented history about our issues with water seepage through the stairs. There's a long history to it and a problem. There was some review of it. They talked about pitching of stairs. If you look, there's some really ugly repairs that were like grinding of stone and things that really didn't do anything except make it look ugly. They did inspect a bunch of stuff, and more recently now, Chris, and I'll leave it to him now, instead of it being concern of water coming from the upper deck penetrating the concrete pad somehow and coming out, it seems that a lot of this water is coming from the big planter and then pushing its way across. And I'll let Chris expand on this. It's been a concern of mine for early on during the project that was, pushed back at me on.
Yeah, that's, it certainly hasn't been scientific, but that's, based on some appearances that we saw when they were watering the garden, we would notice a little bit of extra seepage through the stairs. So again, not perfect, but it just seemed to be pointing that way. And that elevated head of water was pushing out through the stairs. We've long known, as Pete said, we've long known that water has seeped out through the stairs. We weren't necessarily comfortably sure where it was coming from, potentially just high water table but it does seem to be that it could be that raised garden.
It's interesting because that garden with that radiused wall, that I noticed more failures in the mortar joints today at the end of the treads nearest that planter that Pete was describing. So it's interesting, and it makes me wonder, do we have like some positive side waterproofing in that planter to keep the water out? Who knows what SMMA drew? Who knows what was installed? But for what it's worth, it looks pretty bad. And it's going to get worse, and especially in the winter, it's going to get worse quickly. So it's something I think we got to figure out, or it's going to become a bigger problem. But interesting idea about where the water may be coming from.
Yeah, and it's definitely a focal point to me. I don't think we can do anything that's really substantial duration right now. We'll have to wait to the spring. Yeah. And it is something that I want to do and look at, whether we're going to pack joints or look at weep holes or what we do. But I agree with you. It was a travesty from the start that beautiful walkway just ended up being ground and stuff coming out. There was a lot of back and forth from me to SMMA about that, and Consigli and Skanska.
Well, I appreciate all of the time you've put into it. I hope we can find a way to address it in a permanent fashion. So it would be good to keep on our radar.
Roger.
Thanks, Jay.
Anything else on high school? No. Thank you, Chris and Peter.
Sure.
Helpful. And moving on to Lynch, ad reno, item A, ad reno option AR2 update. Charlie or Chris taking that?
Sure. So what we left it that we would come back this week with somewhat more developed materials relative to the three final options, with the hope and goal of selecting a preferred direction forward. Am I able to share a screen? Is that possible?
Let's see.
Looks like maybe.
Yes, try now, Charlie.
Okay, let's see here. Where am I? Okay. So is anybody seeing that?
Yes.
Yep.
Seem like it's adequately large and viewable? Okay. So we had said we'd come back to you and talk about these schemes a little bit more. So we'll talk first about the addition renovation. We're not really talking about the renovation. The presumption is that the renovation is not truly a finalist. We've talked about that in the past. It doesn't meet it doesn't meet the space template. It doesn't meet the ed plan. It doesn't seem like the town is going to sensibly want to dump money into a building that doesn't have enough space for your needs. So we're presuming that you're not going to select a renovation, and the MSBA knows that, but as you know, they still ask us to look at it. So we're going to talk about really the ad reno today and the replacement option today. And again, with the hope at the end of the evening, perhaps if you're willing to kind of have a direction in terms of submitting this upcoming PSR submission. So this was the diagram you've seen in the past, right? Everybody see that and recognize it? Mm-hmm. This is an updated version of the site plan. So this is showing you an updated version of site plan you've already seen, but we're proposing this addition to the north of the existing building. It does essentially bisect the site, this addition, but it gives us the opportunity to create capacity on site for pre-K. It allows us to continue to have a parking lot to the west and to have bus drop off and pick up to the west, to have a car loop to the east, essentially where it is now. And we can still create a vehicular and pedestrian connection between the two. Play is moved from where it is currently, which is where the addition is going, of course, to the area to the west, which has some benefits. It's going to be close to where the entrance is to pre-K. The main entrance remains effectively where it was before, but there really are both of the entrances that have been there previously continue to be there. So that's the site plan. It's not unfamiliar to you. In terms of the plan, this is the main floor. So what's happened, if you see the yellow box to the north, that's now 7 pre-K classrooms, pre-K administration, and pre-K SPED support spaces. And then administration, which is the brown box directly below that yellow box, is an expanded administration. You can then see we've done our best to group classrooms in as logical a way as we possibly can. A couple of strange things have happened that I think with more massaging we could solve. One of them is that in order to get the media center to be the adequate size, we've expanded the media center that's there now and pushed into the courtyard. So we're actually building an addition into the courtyard in order to have enough space for media. The cafeteria stays where it is. The gym stays where it is. We've taken the wing on the right, the far east side of the building, the wing that has the, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, so This wing now has a music and flex space in it, and instead of that, we've organized it with classrooms in that wing in order, again, to get the adequate number of classrooms, to get classrooms that are right the square footage, and to get them at least together. The kind of art, music, and makerspace have gone down into the kind of the new classrooms in the southwesterly corner, which have those nice high ceilings and might make a very nice kind of zone for those sort of functions. And they're also grouped together. Back of house stays where it is, boiler room stays where it is. And we've given the kindergarten kind of a grouping on the south side. But the fact of the matter is, one of the kind of goals of the ed plan and that kind of exercise of going through the visioning was to create kind of smaller learning communities where grades were grouped. We can't really accomplish that literally with this floor plan. However, we've done our best to fit the program into it. And then the other floor is really what's being called here the basement, which might be not a very complimentary turn of phrase. It probably should be called lower level. Maybe we could fix that. But we've put 5th grade down there. But the fact of the matter is, whether it's 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, some grade is isolated on the lower level in order to fully utilize the building. So that's kind of how the ad reno works. It's effectively, building a big pre-K wing and then completely reconfiguring the existing building and doing a little bit of an addition into a courtyard in order to get media to be the right size. Are there any kind of questions about this option? Particularly? Comments, concerns?
Chris, do you see any hands raised?
I don't see any hands.
No? Okay.
Not seeing any hands raised, Jay.
Yeah. All right.
So the next option, of course, is the replacement option, and you all were focused and mission directed towards mission critical last week, which we appreciated in terms of narrowing down the replacement option, which is really a key milestone in getting us to where we need to get over the finish line for this upcoming PSR. This is the diagram that we started with way back when for an N5 replacement. It's obviously now changed fairly significantly. This is an updated site plan that was done this week based on a new floor plate. And the building blocks of the building effectively remain kind of where they are in terms of their orientation. But by removing the old building, we open up the entire southerly quadrant of the site. It allows us to have adequate queuing for cars. It allows us to have adequate queuing for buses and cars. There are multiple entrances, including a separate dedicated or not, and that's a conversation to have, but there is the potential for a dedicated pre-K entrance near pre-K play. There is a green swath in the center that could have active play. There's the concept of being able to connect the building down to the south into the sort of wooded landscape in the southeast corner of the site, which could make a great place for outdoor learning. On the northerly side of the building, we now have a connection to the soccer fields and the opportunity for more sort of controlled either play or outdoor learning. There's the opportunity to have something on the easterly end of the building as well that could be used for outdoor learning, outdoor classroom. And we've gone from a parking total of around, and I know somebody had asked about this earlier, which is why we put it here. We've gone from an existing total of parking of around 95 to a proposed total of about 127. And obviously these are round numbers. Well, certainly the proposed is a round number subject to change, but something along those lines. So we do get a reasonable increase in parking spaces with the new plan. And the building begins to unify the site. So we have the northern quadrant of recreational fields that the school can use during the week, that the community can use in the evenings and weekends. There's parking, there's access to those fields. And then the kids can go south and north. The gym can open up onto that northerly parcel. The cafeteria can open up onto the southerly parcel, which makes it adjacent to play. It also means that that's a good thing for like pick up and drop off if you want to keep kids dry or warm while they're waiting for cars or buses. So that's kind of the site plan as it sits right now. It still has the connection from Brantwood and the connection from the Horn Pond Brook. And there is a connection, circular connection through the site. So that could be closed off. It could remain open. We've talked about those concepts. The idea is to give you as much flexibility ultimately in the end to configure it the way you want to, and that could change operationally over time. So that's the site plan. The floor plans, these continue and will continue to be diagrams for quite some time. So these are just really early days trying desperately to fit the program. And they will become more sophisticated and more refined over time. We also will very much need the input of the district and the educators to truly make these work the way the district wants it to work. So this is really an early stage. But you can see that yellow wing to the right, that is pre-K, the opportunity for a dedicated pre-K entrance, the opportunity for a controlled entrance with pre-K admin, where students could get buzzed in or not. And then a series of pre-K classrooms as well as a pre-K sped area. And to the left of that entrance and to the right of the main entrance is kindergarten. So we have K and pre-K on the ground level, along with music, administration, which is a big brown box there. And again, that main entrance, people can be buzzed in. It's a control point. It's a way of creating a safe school. And then to the far left is the big block that has cafeteria and gym. Right now, we've got to organize so that the platform and stage could be accessed from both sides. It doesn't have to be. Those are conversations we will have to have in the future. And on the far, far left is that gray sort of wedge shape box, and that's back of house, which is BOH, and kitchen and storage. And obviously, that whole service area will need a service entrance for deliveries and the like. But there's the opportunity to do that over there because there will be, roadway and paving. So that's the first floor. We did actually reach out to the educational planner, David Stephen, for this project, who led the visioning, and asked him his view on this whole question, the conversation we had last week about grade configuration, which Frank very articulately talked about in terms of the logic of how to organize the building. And David agreed with the district's view on this, which is that he said most typically he would see in a 3-story building pre-K and K together, that he thought made sense educationally and developmentally. And then he said he thought, this is the second floor now, that it made a lot of sense to have 1 and 2 together, and that 3 was really the grade, and it makes a whole lot of sense to have 4 and 5 together. His view was 3 was the grade that could go either way. It could be with 1 and 2, it could be with 4 and 5. This is the second floor. And again, these classrooms are grouped into communities. And they have with them the support kind of spaces such as bathrooms, special education, and the like. This plan has both STEM and art on the second floor. We had talked previously about having STEM on the third floor. It could very easily be on the third floor. So I think, and so could art. So those kind of conversations will be ongoing. Media is on the second floor, which is a great place for it because it's in the middle of the building vertically. And then the far left block is the big white box, is just gym and cafeteria, which of course would have taller spaces, typically stack stuff on top of them. Media has a very nice orientation. These have good views. Obviously, the second, third floor has smaller classrooms, which is why you see the floor plates being not as deep as the first floor. But we think that gives us the opportunity to create some bays and maybe some nooks and crannies, as the assistant superintendent mentioned in her comments about sort of educational planning in these upper grades. And then music is also typically open to above because, you want a higher ceiling for acoustic reasons. So those don't tend to be the lower ceilings. They'll be 14, 16-foot ceilings, which aren't two full floors. But so that's the second floor. And then the third floor right now is 4 and 5 with supporting spaces again. And as I mentioned, this could have it could have this STEM makerspace up here. It could also have art up here. So those are conversations we're going to have with the district about where they think we should best organize this. As you can see, we have extra roof space here, roofscape. There was talk of a greenhouse, which would be kind of super cool, that could go there. There was also a conversation about the similarities in some ways to the VO. We could string all of these classrooms together laterally and have so that the corridor had southerly light with a kind of roofscape in front of it. Either of those could work, but the fact is that that's 4 classrooms worth of expansion space. In the future, we also think we could probably expand to the north with a classroom block that would be accessed through what is now a stair that would become a corridor, and that's another logical place to try to expand the building in the future. And we'll develop that diagram further as we move along. Each floor has teacher planning in the center. So there's 3 teacher planning centers, and those are really, act as copy centers, conference rooms, spot to get coffee, but really are trying to encourage collaboration and common planning and a place to go to make copies and prints. So that's kind of the floor plate, the massing of it, really, really, really early stage. But this is just kind of getting sort of just generated very quickly by Revit. But you can begin to see the articulation of some bays, the lower scale to the bigger floor plate at the bottom, which might give the building a nice kind of a scale with these things sitting on top of it. I don't know that this cafeteria has to be as tall as it is shown here. Media center you'd see in the front, which could be very nice with a lot of glass, transparency. I mean, one of the things we heard loud and clear in the visioning session from parents in part was trying to make the building seem welcoming and transparent, safe, but transparent, so that when parents arrive, they're oriented, they know where they are. So one of the thoughts is that these kind of knuckles that are these angled pieces have on the first floor a lot of glass for a lobby so that you can really see into them and be oriented. Here is a kind of a site diagram. We talked a little bit about this last week, and this is very diagrammatic and conceptual, but it shows you some things. It shows you the footprint of the building in gray. It shows you where the chain link fence currently is that kind of defines the edge of the developed site versus the trees. These green lines are the tree line, defined very loosely. This yellow line, which we have shown all the way through, is the 500-year floodplain. So obviously our building footprint is well out of that. The dashed blue lines are utility lines. We talked last week about this utility line that dives down towards the existing building. That's kind of like a significant utility corridor. it turns out now that we have an updated survey that there's also a water line that extends across the site that's not in that same utility corridor. That is going to be disrupted by the replacement option if the replacement option is selected. The engineers have no concern about that. They think that relocating a water line is not going to be too big a deal. And then, of course, we've talked about it many times. These purple dashed lines are the 100 and 200 foot wetland, well, the 100-foot wetland buffer setback, the 200-foot Rivers Act setback. So those are key regulatory components of the planning. They did pick up botanist wetland flags, and we now know that there is a kind of a bulge where wetlands do come out into the fields, which is interesting, or to the edge of the fields. It's sort of a low area farther up the site, and we're nowhere close to that, but you do now see that 100-year buffer zone extends out into the fields. And then you can see in different colors, if you squint, different topo lines. The orange here is a 40-foot line that kind of goes along the edge of the soccer field. The soccer field is at about 39. And then a little bit more in our site is the 45-foot line, which kind of runs right through where our building is, and then down the site. And then on the left is the 50 and the 55-foot high topo lines. Those are that kind of higher hill to the northwest part of the site. Right now, we're sort of thinking maybe the building ends up at something like 45. The existing building is at about 47. If it were at 45, it would be about a 5 to 6 foot drop down to the soccer fields. So there could be a fairly gentle slope that could resolve that difference in topography. And there is the low area, which I believe right about here where my cursor is, that would obviously need to be filled because that is kind of a little mini kettle right there. As part of the project, as part of the earthwork for the project. And over to the far right, the topo is dropping away. So if we're at 45 and we're at the 40-foot topo line here, we are going to need to resolve those grades as well. So it looks to us like it's probably a fill project by the time we're done. Initially, I thought maybe we'd be balanced, but I don't think we will be. I think we're going to end up probably importing material to make this work. There is a kind of an old path that I suppose was a vehicular path that comes around to the east. And it may be that becomes the temporary access to the soccer fields during construction, because I think we're pushing over so far to the west here that we're not going to be able to get to the existing paths that go to the soccer fields and still have reasonable enclosure around construction. So it may be that for the course of construction and for maintaining those fields, we may end up rerouting folks from the west to the east in order to get to the soccer fields. So that's kind of what we have for today. And that gives you a sense of where we are with sort of planning around these two options. Are there questions around N5?
I'll start with one, Charlie. On the laydown area, what did you have in mind, where the old school was? Or do you think we'd be losing some fields up front?
So a week from now, we're going to present an initial idea about phasing and logistics. I think that the fact of the matter is the only real place it looks to me like we could do laydown would be to give the contractor a zone on the far west end of the site by Brantwood Road, which would mean taking some trees down. And I don't know how popular or unpopular that is. I mean, I don't know if that's a third rail. Taking some trees down and giving them a zone to the west where they could have direct access. They'd come in off of pond and immediately go onto the site. and then they'd have sort of a laydown zone to the west. They also could have some space, I think, to the north before you get to the first soccer field, but we can't take too much of that soccer field or all of a sudden we start losing field space. So it's going to be a bit of a delicate dance there, but there's really simply not going to be any space in front of the building, because we need to maintain some sort of pickup and drop off from Royal Street on the east. We need to maintain the current bus loop from Brantwood Road to the west. And we have an existing building that needs to operate. So they're rather close together. I mean, you can see here, we're taking the loop as part of this project. So the easterly loop is going to be gone. We think you can fit a 50-foot turning radius, which is basically an SUV, in here. It's not going to be bus scale. It's only going to be car scale, but we probably can get a 50-foot radius here, which means cars can come in, drop their children off, their children can still get to the entry. The loop to the west, we think we can maintain, and students can get to the main entrance or to the gym entrance. But beyond that, we're essentially going to have a construction fence between the two buildings. And we'll talk a little bit more, and we won't do it today. We'll talk a little bit more about what this means in terms of parking too, because that is another challenge, of course, because this replacement project takes over a lot, more than half the parking on site, and we need to figure out a way to solve that temporarily.
We are basing this on an occupied versus a chance that we could have swing space.
I think we're basing it on the assumption we will have some swing space.
Yeah.
We are not necessarily basing it on the fact that we have swing space for the entire school population. We're making the assumption that we can get a couple of grades off site and that we can take down at least a portion of the existing building in order to create enough parking spaces to at least satisfy the need for staff.
Okay. Geetha has a question.
Charlie, I guess the grades sort of give me some sense to visualize it. I suppose if you could bring the last slide and I can sort of ask the concern, yeah. So I guess, to the south of the chain link fence, the ground is wicked hard, like a hard till. And when we sort of cross the chain link fence and enter into that, you called it as a knoll, or, that little area that you're talking about, Charlie. I guess, isn't that almost 20 feet and almost, goes to the east, more than the area that it's shown here? It's not the area of my concern. My concern is once we get down to that area, it's much softer and a very moist, sensitive material. So it's just, I'm just saying that area that you have shown here, it's much larger than, to my recollection. And the other thing I wanted to add is, when you have big trees, almost dense, what's the depth of those roots that you would think it would go, So normally you don't want to have a building over the remaining roots of the building,
No, we don't we're going to have to, there's going to be significant clearing and grubbing. That's another,
yes,
so one of the topics is this question of how many trees can we take on the far west side by Brantwood Road. The other topic is that this option takes a lot of the existing trees that are now between the soccer field and
not the number is my concern.
That's the reality of the opportunity we have. But the positive outcome of that is that we really begin to unify and connect the site, so that the school gets utility both to the north and to the south of really taking advantage of all this site. And again, one of the things we heard over and over in the visioning was, can't we, such a great site, how do we access more of it? The kids don't have a lot of room to run around and play. How do we resolve that? This begins to, unlock the potential of the whole site. as
So
best
my
we can
concern-
under the constraints.
Yeah, so my concern from the get-go was considering that, digging up the roots and whatnot, having the kids nearby, controlling the dust is not a piece of cake, that's sort of the concern. So it's not the 20 feet, we have to chase the roots to dig it up to build the building. The other one, I thought that low area, it's sort of functioning as a drainage ditch for the field as well as for the the school to the north. So once we take up that, we need to come up with a drainage ditch for the field, so that the field can drain.
Absolutely, and our engineers are fully aware that our civil engineers are fully aware that they need to come up with compensatory storage for this, and I think a lot of it may be underground storage, which has a premium cost, but allows you to put things on top of it. But I mean, I fully expect that the final design will deal with these kind of issues of stormwater.
So here's my thought to that, Charlie, to think about it with your design team. It's just the way the fields are. Again, it's much siltier, much clayer material. So to some point, yes, we can have them stored. After a certain point, it's going to back up because it's just too much, So that's why I was sort of, gosh, if it's a gravity controlled, I'm thinking that the field can take only so much to store it underneath, and at some point it has to go somewhere, and we just don't have enough elevation between the field and the brook, and it's going to back up. So that's all I want. I was expressing concern for those two reasons. It's just the site prep and, controlling the dust would be a headache from the get-go. And it's just the way the sites are to the south of the chain link fence. We have a pretty darn good ground to take up the building very nicely. So
they're good points, and the soils topic we'll have to take up. The drainage topic we have to take up with the civil engineer. I will say they have worked. They know this site, and they've worked in town. Also, the geotechnical engineer has worked extensively in town in terms of, including on hydrology. So they are pretty sensitive to the challenges here relative to those things. I think the issue with dust and work and having construction close to an existing school, that is the reality of doing occupied construction. And we've done an awful lot of it. Doesn't mean it doesn't have some disruption. It just does. I mean, it'll have, although I will say kids don't seem, I think adults are very concerned about it. Kids tend to be entertained by it because they like to look out and see tractors and stuff going on. But, there's going to be noise. There's going to be, you can ask a contractor to be as conscientious as they possibly can. But the fact of the matter is, whenever you're building a building close to another occupied building, you have those issues.
Has any one of your team members had walked to the bottom of the ditch? How soft it is? Just curious.
You're saying how?
The bottom of the
walk to the bottom of the kind of kettle hole?
Yes.
I certainly haven't. I think the landscape architect has. I didn't ask him about it.
Okay, I was just curious, with the rod, can you just push it to 10 feet, just give a glimpse of it, because anyway, maybe my last question, the abandoned well field that we are talking about, and I suppose there are 25 and 5 had been found. Just wondering, do you think any chances the remaining 20 could very well be within the building footprint? In other words, we cannot build unless we know absolutely all the wells had been filled with the grout, so to speak, so that it doesn't create any sinkhole under the building.
Right. So I guess you can build on top of a decommissioned well, right, as long as it's been filled.
Right.
So
My
I
question
think part of the issue will be finding them if we need to find them.
Right. So what's the dilemma if we don't find the 20, and how do we know it's not going to be under the building? Because it would affect sinkhole,
Well,
it would.
if I might, part of VHB's proposal was to do some, just forgetting the term, but they're going to do some,
Yeah.
Penetrating radar.
thank you, ground penetrating radar, so that they're going to locate them. It's
Yeah.
more likely, if you look at all the maps,
Yeah.
the way the fields are labeled, it's called well field.
Yeah.
It's more likely that they're out in the fields and less
Okay.
likely that they're closer to under the building, because that land used to be part of the well field, and at a previous time, I forget, I think back in the 90s, the land that used to be owned by the water department was given over to the school department to build those fields. So it's most likely that the well fields, that the existing wells are in the field location.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Colleen, you had a question?
I did. I wondered if you could pull up the site plan. And I apologize if you talked about this. I had 2 public meetings at the same time today, so I was trying to keep tabs on everything. I don't know how. Basically, I'll just give some overarching, because I think this is the same plan that we saw before. My conversations with Lynch parents and what we're really excited about the potential of having the building located in this area is to a few things. One is to open up that front yard to the nature trails. The second is the fact that both the site is completely, car focused on the left and the right. And then we have this small sliver play area in the middle that's not very safe. Right. It's not very safe for little kids anyway. And I feel like there might be, and again, this could be something that gets worked out later. And Charlie, you can tell me this is so preliminary, it's not even worth focusing on. But my thinking is, very small ways, if we could take, that 50 car parking lot here, if we could, currently the cars, and it's mostly staff, park along what is pretty similar to where you have the driveway in next to Horn Pond Brook Way. So there's a series of spots. If we could think about dividing up that 50, and placing it along the roadway here. And then I also see that it looks like there's a connection through to the site potentially, that I see just that little bit of gray. I know there's some concerns about that and creating.
Talking about here to the south?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There's definitely a connection there. There's a vehicular connection. And what I was saying was that could be left open. It could be controlled by gates. It's entirely up to the district and the town. I do think public safety is going to want it, because they want to be able to respond to an event and come from multiple directions. They're not going to be happy if they're not allowed to get, but it could be controlled. I think what we want to do is plan in for flexibility, and then how you all, the town and the district, want to ultimately, and public safety want to use it becomes up to you.
Yeah. So I guess to that end, I think that there probably needs to be a connection there too. We just know, because I'm on the right hand side, up on Richardson Street, Hornbrook Pond Way. There's absolutely no connection in this part of Winchester through. So there will be some people who will be very excited about the fact that these 2 parts of Winchester are connected and maybe use it. So the fact of having a restriction, I think it's a real thing. And so I guess, just overall, it would be great to have a charrette just on site circulation, understanding exactly where the parking numbers are coming from, if there, can be a notion and thinking about parking and the long-term parking versus short-term parking. And if some of that could be like pedestrian-oriented hardscape that, serves its purpose for the 8 a.m. drop-off and for the 2:30 p.m. pickup, but then, becomes this connection corridor back to the nature trail. So I think there's a lot of program that needs to fit in here. But if we could think about prioritizing play first and the car second, we might find a scenario where, I don't know, it's a little figure ground.
So that's great. And we can absolutely, the landscape architects are terrific. And we can absolutely have that kind of a charrette, as you as you said. And, the other thing we're going to hear from other constituents is, oh my goodness, we're so tired of traffic. Give us as much queuing space as you can. So, and then we're going to hear from fire, oh, well, you got to give us adequate turning radius. So, there's a whole bunch of different
Totally, I
interests.
completely.
But yeah, I think it'd be great. And we're at least you know that our hearts are in the right place. We're trying to think about making that connection to the southeast edge, which I mentioned in my remarks, and how do we connect the school to the north? And so how do we because as I said earlier, we've certainly heard loud and clear that that's a priority.
Yeah, and it could be as simple as thinking about tandem parking. In a lot of schools I work, there are two teachers that are paired together just so that we don't have to accommodate everyone being able to get in and out at the same point. I think there's great opportunity. So I just wanted to note that for record. I know where the intention is, and I think we can work out a scenario potentially where, if the 127 spots are driven by the teachers or community members, then maybe there's a different way to park 127. And if that's not driven, maybe there's a way for us to see if that number really needs to be met, or if there's some way to accommodate.
We also have to look at zoning regs and see what the requirement is, what the town requirement is, and whether you want to seek a variance or not.
Got it. Okay.
Frank's been waiting.
No worries. Thank you. This looks great, Charlie. I just ask you a hypothetical question. If this were a blank site, if there was no existing building and the town had just purchased this and we're looking to build a school, is that how you would cite it?
Ouch. I wasn't prepared for that. I was Frank. I was trying to game plan all your questions so I'd be ready.
Fair enough. And me, of all people, to ask one that you wouldn't expect.
I'm not precisely sure it would be exactly this. No, I think it might be somewhat different because if we knew we had this entire site to work with, we might. Even though it's shorter than some of our options, it's still strung out, right? Because we're constrained to the north by the fields and by the floodplain and by the by various regulatory things. We're constrained to the south by the existing building. We're constrained very much so on the east. We're pushing our luck on the east in terms of setbacks, and on the west, of course, we're constrained by topography and by woods and the like. So we are trying to shoehorn a rather big building into the kind of building envelope we have available to us. If we didn't have that constraint, we might come up with a somewhat different option.
Okay. My question just gets at the concept of, likely not doable, but if we were able to if all the kids were off the site, and this has been brought up before,
I think if all the kids were off the site, we would certainly, I don't know that we would probably not fundamentally change the vertical zoning of it, but we might change how it sits on the site. There are some real benefits to this. It's got great solar orientation, right?
Yeah.
And it has terrific views for the kids, which is really nice, both to the north and to the south. So there are a lot of benefits to the way it's configured.
No, absolutely. All right, thank you.
I was gonna add to that. Charlie just kind of touched on it, but I think it would actually be pretty close to where it's at, just because the building, you can see that we're really trying to sculpt it for like a somewhat of a solar arc. That's not like precise because the sun does not circle this building specifically, right? So it's basically trying to.
It does in our eyes, Chris, but that's okay.
Yeah, sorry, my mistake. But I think the way that it lands on the site and actually does, even though there's not a road per se that connects straight from Brantwood across to Horn Pond Brook. The visual corridor is there. And I think that the building being in a place where you can see through the site, but still have on your periphery, the building there, so you get a sense of what is going to happen on site before you get there. I think is a really good moment in having a south facing entry facade instead of, if you flip the building and have it north side, it's a little less desirable, right? From a planning and site perspective. And so while you have more stuff here to deal with. I do think that if we were given a blank slate without a building currently there, it'd probably end up pretty close to what you're seeing. It may, like Charlie said, not exact, but it's shoehorning, but it's also, I think there's a lot of good, sound decisions that are wrapped up in this.
And my question really is just trying to get at, would there be a benefit? And that's really looking at trying to get all students off site if it was going to have an impact, enough of a positive impact on how you would lay it out, getting back to some of the questions around play space and entry. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I would say to Colleen's comments, the things are sort of, they're forces that are colliding, right? Because to generate from Charlie's past comments that the further you push this thing down, the toothpaste tube, all of that parking and stuff has got to expand somewhere. And so we're going to, push it down, and then you have a building bisecting play and all kinds of things. So it's sort of like, to get a wider green space in the middle, we got to push the parking and driveways to east and west so we can get that center thing opened up. But then if we move the building down because no one's in the existing one and we can just tear it all down, then you've suddenly compacted all that parking again that's got to push back on the play. So I think it's all careful balance, and the charrette kind of gets to some of that. But I do think that where it's at is probably, we might, if you could move it down a few feet, that would benefit us maybe a little bit for the fill and reasons Charlie mentioned up above, but I don't think it would go that far.
If is Chris Conway still on?
I'm here.
Chris, do you want to comment about what you're saying about the back house?
Folks, one of the things I had noticed was currently you're carrying back of house functions on the first floor. I understand it's, sort of a almost schematic block at this point, but one of the things I was thinking is that there should be some sort of board of health, back of house allocation on the second and third floor as well for custodian closets, utility rooms, cleaning materials, things like that, just so that they're not added at the end. I think there should be some allocation up front on the second and third floor for that function, preferably centrally located, and that picks up your electrical runs and, water, custodian closet with plumbing in it, all that. Just wanted to put that out there. I was noticing on the N5 that the back of house functions were only on the first floor.
Absolutely. No question. That's super important. It'll probably, that kind of level of detail will probably come with schematic design. But
yeah, I was just thinking a block at this point, just because you were showing everything as blocks, just so it doesn't get
we
overlooked.
Definitively will not forget about that. And it may be the allocation for mechanical space gets distributed. I mean, one of the nice things about, getting away from, quote unquote boilers is you can begin sometimes to decentralize some of the equipment and stuff. And that may help us as well, get some of the stuff off the first floor. So no doubt.
Okay.
Chris Nixon. Have a question?
Hey, Jay, thanks. You hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I had to jump in the car and drive a kiddo to a hockey rink, so I've been listening in on this. This is really, I think, almost for a later stage in design, but thinking more about Colleen's observations about parking. I wanted to kind of just throw out a couple of observations about present-day activity at Lynch and at VO. So it's not at all unusual. I think Colleen and I lived this when we were pre-K parents, that many parents actually pull up on the other side of Horn Pond Brook, park along the street, walk their kids into the building, because there essentially is a shortage of parking on site when you're approaching from that side. And that's not really onerous to me. I mean, it's just another element of getting your kid to school and bumping into whomever you might know. And it occurs to me that at Vincent Owen, where we have that wonderful science park, I was observing recently a very large number of cars will actually parallel park on Amberwood Drive off of Johnson Road. And we have, they seem to be the older kids, maybe 4th, 5th graders. They're actually walking through the science park, through the woods, finding their way to Amberwood Drive to, get their ride home. And that also, to me, is okay. It's just, it's another way to find your ride, right? So I wonder if we might consider maybe a footbridge or something over the brook at the east side of the site that might allow some kids to find their way. Because, you know, right now we have a bridge, but it's primarily for vehicles. It's not a very friendly bridge to be crossing as a pedestrian. I'm talking about the one sort of on the pre-K end of the building today. And I do wonder if there isn't an opportunity to look at maybe some sort of pedestrian infrastructure that might further just promote walking to school of our students, or even if it means just walking to some other pickup point for a car line that happens to be off site. I think that may be worth exploring.
Any other comments on N5?
I had a question, Dave, but
Okay.
what would it take if we have to have the daylight in the gym for the 24 hours a day? In other words, right now, the way the configuration would we say that it's below the ground?
It's not below the ground in this plan. It's actually at grade. We did not end up needing to bury anything. It's all basically at the same elevation. So it's all at grade as grade entrances and exits, which means we should be able to have adequate daylighting.
Okay. Maybe other question. I thought the lower classes, maybe pre-K and K, the way they have dismissal, do they look for, especially when you have young kids, I went through that, when you have a little one in the stroller, that, in the bad weather, you want to have an opportunity, you just pull in and the kid would just get into the car, as opposed to that, you have to park the car and walk and come and get the child. I thought Ambrose had it, and I know VO for a little bit sort of made it work by making that loop. And I was wondering whether there's a preference to that here as well.
Ita, can I just say about kindergartner at Lynch? We have to walk them in. So there's no drop off for that age group. And
like in the pickup, Colleen, when the 12:30 comes, you have another little one sitting in the car. And
totally. And as soon as my older son got, I think it was first grade or something. I'm just letting you know the sort of the distinction of what the teachers do, and that could just be because of where things are situated now. Maybe it's not a policy, but I just wanted to chime in to say that for kindergarten and younger, we still have to walk them in. But I think first grade and up, you can do that kiss and ride.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm not I won't be a younger one anymore, but it was a blessing those days. I could just, drive through and get my child and just get out of the school, So anyway, whether that option is here or not, I don't know, but it was really helpful.
So preschool times are staggered. Because we have 4 sections at Parkhurst right now. We basically do a rolling valet, which works pretty well because we also have students who take a little bit more time to get out of specialized transportation. So, but it's staggered time. So they come in later than the rest of the elementary schools start, and they leave earlier.
All right. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Okay. Any other questions? So are we ready to make a decision on this?
Yeah.
That's a trick question. We have Lisa and Brian. Neither one could be on the call, but they both wrote emails. I know it doesn't count towards it, but they're both in favor of N5. Just so you know.
Is the choice, Jay, between N5 and A2?
N5 and AR2.
Yeah.
And the renovation scheme if you want to.
Yeah. I always discount that from the start. So.
Well, I agree with Charlie's earlier assessment. I mean, the renovation option is a non-starter. if there's no further comments, I'm happy to make a motion that we authorize the development of the preferred schematic submission with N5 as the preferred option for submittal to the MSBA.
I second that.
Second.
Okay, second by Colleen. So take a roll call. Todd?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Don?
Yes. Aye.
And Frank?
Aye.
Okay, passed. N5 it is. Thank you.
Thank you. It's real. We find ourselves in a situation where we have a somewhat accelerated schedule on this particular project of these two early phases, as we already talked about, PDP and PSR, and it's enormously helpful that you all have been insightful and definitive in your views, because it's the only way we were going to get this thing across the finish line. So that's great, and it allows us to we'll submit this PSR in 3+ weeks with the three options. We'll price the three options, but we will indicate to the MSBA that the district's preferred option is N5. And, N5 will change. It will move around. It will evolve. It will become more refined. It will benefit enormously from things like what Colleen was talking about, which is getting the input of constituents. And it will also benefit enormously from getting the input ultimately of teachers and administrators from the district. So all of that is to come. It won't come during this phase in the next 3 weeks, but it will come during the schematic design phase. So thank you.
All right, moving on to authorizations for payments. Just right before the meeting, I sent out the letter from Meg. Has everyone had a chance to review it? Any questions? All right, so we have TAPE for $91,084.50, Hill International for $14,372.50, Frida for $541.35. And then for the high school, those are all for Lynch. And the high school, we have Welch for $1,140 even. So we get a motion to approve?
Do you want separate motions, Jay, for the high school one, or do you want to go?
I think one is okay. They're all payments.
I'll make the motion.
All right, second?
Second.
Okay. Do a roll call. Geetha?
Aye.
All right, Colleen?
Aye.
Todd?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Frank? Don?
Aye.
Chris Nixon?
Aye.
Okay, so approved. And moving on, other business. Do we have any?
So I just want to put in a quick plug for those who had expressed interest in reviewing the MEP documents on the carriage house. Just want to remind everybody from the website, the school committee special projects website. So if you have any comments or questions on the MEP narrative, could you kindly send them to Jay, copy me, I suppose, and depending upon what feedback we're getting, we can kind of figure out how to react to it, answer questions, call a meeting, or what have you. I'd like to also just say that TAPE, at the request of the school committee, did go back and administration go back and kind of look at that architectural planning to see if there were any opportunities to kind of reduce that net to gross multiplier. I think did a good job looking at a couple of different options, but at the end of the day felt that where we landed at the end of schematics was pretty close to kind of the most efficient arrangement. There have been some minor adjustments in terms of the location of staff and the movement of some demising walls, but really nothing of any significance, and nothing, by the way, that would impact in any way the MEP narratives that were written up for the project at Schematics. So TAPE is, with that architectural study now kind of behind them, they're beginning to kind of work with the engineering team and getting some drawings pulled together as well. So please, if anybody has any feedback at all on the narratives, can you, please get that out? We'd certainly like to address that. And, Jay, I might ask you just sort of take a moment to describe Yeah, let me say one other thing. So the cost estimate on the project from Schematics is also included there on the website. And if anybody has any questions or comments about that, I think those are also welcome. Jay has previously noted there's some scope that maybe is carried like as a unit cost. In the absence of any drawings, maybe that's the way to do it. But the goal is to get, let's say, maybe a more accurate, more realistic sense of scope and cost. And the only way to do that is to produce drawings. So some of Jay's feedback in that area has been really helpful. So if folks do have questions or comments on the cost estimate, I think those are welcome as well. The TAPE is hard at work and kind of pushing ahead. The other comment I would just make, and this is more just about logistics of doing stuff. So folks can find, I've created a subfolder on the project drive called subcommittees. We have one for, of course, sustainability. So there's a folder for that. The agenda for next week's meeting is there as well. The meeting has been posted. I don't know if Frank or Andrew can confirm. I think the panelist links went out for that today, but if they didn't, they'll be going out soon. That'll be in a webinar format as well. So I just want to appreciate everybody for getting back to us in terms of their availability. And for some people, I know their availability may be kind of limited to only half the meeting or something, but we've identified that 2-hour block next week to cover a lot of ground. So that was it.
Don, you had a comment?
Yeah, just on the central office relocation project, where I'm just looking at the WPS website, and I'm only seeing the September school committee presentation and the relocation study, which I think are both from September. Is there something new?
It wouldn't be on that. Don, Chris, where are we keeping that for view? Or do we just send, can I just send it out?
Yeah, sorry, I thought you said it was on that website, but I guess it's not.
Not the carriage house isn't. No.
Okay.
Chris said it was on the school's webpage, but under special projects or something like that.
Yeah, I did.
So let me,
I don't see that.
I will get in front of the PC here in about 4 minutes and I will find that and let everybody know.
Okay.
Andrew, do you know where it is, Andrew?
Yes, that's parked under the school committee site under special projects. So I think Mark's at the right spot there.
Don, you had a question?
Yeah, Charlie, Andy, Vivian, do you need the minutes, a draft copy of the minutes on an emergency basis here? Or how much time do we have to get them out to everybody to review?
We're not submitting, we're submitting, you're going to vote to submit the PSR on February 28th that you're at the meeting.
All right.
And then we'll submit on the 3rd. So it would be wonderful to have everything available by the 1st or the 1st, essentially, sort of our deadline.
Okay.
So if all the meetings are up until that point are approved on the 28th?
Okay. Then we'll be
Colleen?
good. That's fine.
Okay.
Colleen?
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back on the conversation about getting estimates for geothermal. So the numbers that I'm getting, I'm not able to sort of separate out early scope packages. Both schools were contaminated. So that's much more complexity than what we'll have on this project. And I just wonder, is it simple enough for us to have an RFP or put together? I just wonder how these things normally happen for services that are outside of the design team, because I think in order to make the case for geothermal, we're likely going to, make sure that their scope for assessment matches our project specifically. I don't want to say it's $70,000 and have everyone here say, that's insane, we're not going to do it, if it's really 30 for our project. So I guess I'm just asking Vivian and folks how you normally bring on. I'm at a dead end without giving you guys a number that I think is way too high for what it would actually be for Lynch, and that might make it a non-starter, and I don't want to do that.
That they can provide proposals with our existing engineers on doing that. I don't think you need to go and do an RFP process for that. It's just basically be treated as an additional service to the engineers that are already on board, and we can have them break out the clarity on exactly what they're studying and all the scope. So if you want us to ask them for a proposal, we could do that and pass that along.
I think it was something that Chris and Todd, we all talked about.
I think it would be great, Chris, if you can do that, because we were initially looking at cost for the upfront portion, where I had the cost for the construction and on each of the wells. And Colleen, forgive me if I'm overstating, but that you were going to look in for the consultants, and you seem to be running into a dead end. That if Chris, you could go back to your consultant and ask for it, I think it'd be helpful to understand what the overall cost of exposure would be to look into these.
You're just asking for the ground study of the soil conditions to understand its capacity in terms of storage, and then basically doing like a schematic of what I guess would be looking at what it's a little bit chasing the tail a little bit until we have actual energy numbers, right?
Yeah,
to like balance towards.
Yeah, maybe we can assume not a super aggressive EUI, but something that's, like just north of 30, something
32?
like that. 32.
Okay.
I mean,
Do you
normally
think
we want to be at 25.
You think that's where we'll land?
Well, hopefully no. Hopefully we'll be a lot lower, but we don't want to.
I wouldn't want to go in at a conservative EUI like that, and then, or that's not conservative, but you know what I mean. It's like, let's be as real as we can. I think all points are indicating that we're probably at the very least be on a path one, Eversource path one trajectory, which is like better than 25, right? So let's just start there.
Okay.
Which most of our schools recently are falling there or below, right? So I think it's safe that we know how to get it there, and then they can do some rough. I mean, we've done it on other projects, so I think we know what to do. What we'll do is Charlie and I will work with the consultants and put together a proposal.
One of the things we have to do is a schematic of where you'd put the well fields too. I mean, we got to kind of figure that out. So that's part of it.
That's part of the problem.
And just so it's clear to everyone, I'm not proposing that we decide to go for geothermal and like sidelining anything. It's all we're doing is getting a cost for the study.
Right.
That will then give us the cost for the implementation. And then we will vote on that as a group to say it's worth it to study or not. So I just want to make sure you don't think I'm coming out saying this is.
Colleen, what I would say, Colleen, is maybe this is the topic for the sustainability subcommittee.
Okay.
We'll take it up in that group and deal with this sort of like proposal. This is how much it is. And then the subcommittee can make the recommendation to the larger committee to like, we think this study will be valuable in helping us chart the course on sustainability. So
that sounds great. I just
not
know
to
in
tell
my
you
own
guys
world,
your business.
yeah. I just know in my own world, getting proposals right now is taking forever.
But
so
the 70,000 is not shocking, I don't think, to us.
Yeah.
But that was also 70,000. Okay. Yeah, that was 70,000 for a school 3 times and one school 5 times the size of ours. So
but
I know it's not
they're not necessarily inexpensive, these studies.
Yeah.
It's probably somewhere between 30 and 70. As you noted. So right. But we'll get the numbers and pass that on.
Chris, you have another question?
Yeah, so I wanted to share screen with everybody so you know where to find this information again. So if you go to the district webpage and you click on school committee, you pull up the school committee webpage. You go to news and special projects right here, and you will find a big page on the carriage house, some background. You've got TAPE's presentation to the school committee in September, but you click this link. Well, there's also links to the WinCam meetings. You click right here, Central Office Relocation Study. That pulls up the entire report. It is 130 pages.
It's the one from September, though, Chris, right? It hasn't been updated since then.
No.
Okay.
So this was basically a schematic report, in September, and then we took that to town meeting and got the funding to sort of move the football one more down, if you will. So this is the latest, and this has the narratives in here. The section 4 is the cost estimate, project cost summary, and so forth. So that's where folks can find that.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you had, I thought there was a new version. So that's what I was looking at for, and I couldn't find it. But
no worries.
Geetha, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Colleen's question. I guess since you brought it up here, I was going to hold it until the sustainability. But anyway, Colleen, I would definitely encourage you to go and see the MSBA site, and especially with the geothermal. They had the Arlington High School, which the causes of which it had failed. So
right, I'm working on that one.
They
so
have I guess, you guys know when you're trying to get what I can sort of offer this as an example that you can visualize. If you have a golf course and they have a well that you're trying to get permit, you have to prove from top to bottom that you're not tapping into public water supplies. So that's sort of an analogy that I can pull here. Even though the concept-wise it's good, we cannot tap into the public water supplies that's next to the site. That's sort of the concept. So that's why they have to go well deep into the ground to get the water. I'm just trying to put the thought in front of you, Colleen. It's just a site and where
sometimes
it is.
It doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work.
So that's what comes behind it. And I would definitely encourage at Arlington High School, and they had a presentation, I think, the December 2021, just to give some insight.
We found contamination. I'm on that project. We found
so
contamination.
That's sort of the analogy.
We can disrupt it. But that also had a previous use, a phase 1 assessment that they knew that there was some possibility for contamination.
Right.
I don't think that we have a phase 1. Do we have a phase 1 here that would indicate that we have contamination?
No, we have a phase 1, and there was no indication in it.
Right, by use, right? But no, I hear you, Geetha. We knew that was
the contamination, like pond. We don't own the water; it's by the town of Woburn. Things like that, because it's connected to the public water supplies. You know what I mean? So we cannot tap into that and draw the water and heat our building. You see what I'm saying? Just in a branch way, if I could put it. Yeah.
I suspect that the well field, if it works out, will be where the playground is, not in the field.
Yeah. What I'm saying is just the concept, just to, when you're trying to pump a well, it creates a cone of depression. You know what I mean? So you have to have enough water. So you need to, so it's more like that kind of along the way. It's just the way sometimes the site is constrained, and it puts restriction. The analogy that I can tell is when golf courses have their own well, when they have to get it permitted, they have to go through series of bedrock well test and whatnot. So the geothermal, to the best of my knowledge right now, they don't have any permitting. But the dilemma is, that's why the last time I brought it up, that so-called envision rating, so to speak. LEED is more towards the buildings, but the envision maybe talk about site developments and what you can do and cannot do. And one example they had was geothermal worked because they were reclaiming an abandoned quarry, so to speak. So that, yes, you're blessed with the site and go ahead with the geothermal, it'll work. But anyway, that's what I wanted to offer.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that geothermal would turn out to be something viable, but I have no expectation. It's expensive, it's a longer payback and all of that, but I think it's worth the study, just like any of the other things we're going to look at. And then that's why I'm glad that you're on this committee, because I think you're, as far as I understand, the only stormwater expert. So having you as a lens for that, I think will be really. I mean, I know it's geotech, but it's in all of the realm that you are in. So
we have to get to select board. So we review, the next meeting will be the 16th and then the 28th.
And I think Frank's latest thinking here, right, Frank, is that rather than kind of go out and talk to parents about different phasing options and bring that back for the 16th, give TAP-A some time to work through some of the phasing and logistics and bring that back to us in some fashion next week, right? And so maybe by the 28th, we'll be in a better position for you to have shared some of that and getting some feedback.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? Shouldn't have asked.
Happy to make a motion to adjourn.
All right, second.
I second.
All right.
And I apologize.
Not a problem. We have a busy night tonight. It's been a busy day for everyone. Todd?
Aye.
Geetha?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Frank?
Aye.
All right. We're adjourned. And we'll be on Select Board a little bit later if anyone wants to watch. They have nothing better to do tonight.
Thank you.
Jay, is somebody going to give us a high sign on when to connect to that?
Yeah, why don't you just text us and let us know when you're on board? We should assume no earlier than 7:45, given their agenda.
Or should we just log on then?
You could go get a cup of coffee or whatever suits you, and, and then give yourself 10 minutes, then you can log in.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, guys.